Currier. I am a professor at the University of Mississippi Medical Center Department of Preventive Medicine and a former state health officer with the Mississippi State Department of Health. And I'm here to introduce folks for the Children's Foundation Chat for Children, who can be our experts on injury prevention and our experts in how to prevent children from injuring themselves and suffering the lifetime long-term effects of those injuries. Injuries are one of the leading causes of death in children, specifically car wreck types of injuries, automobile injuries, but we also have fire injury deaths. We certainly have issues with lead poisoning, and we also have issues with secondhand smoke and asthma and the things that come from that. All those things are injuries, and it's important that parents and grandparents know how to prevent those. So we're relying on these professionals that I'm about to introduce to help us understand how we can prevent those injuries. Much better to prevent them than to have to deal with the consequences. So we've got folks from the State Fire Marshal's Office, and we've got Tammy Peavy, who is a fire safety educator with the State Fire Marshal's Office. She began her fire service career in 1994 as a volunteer with the Tri-Community Fire Department in Marion County, and has worked really both locally and statewide, and is also the Mississippi representative to the National Fire Protection Association. So she has worked nationally in fire prevention as well. We have Paige Bailey, also with the Fire Marshal's Office, who is a fire safety educator. And she is a licensed social worker. So she comes at this from a different point of view and can offer different expertise. And then Zach Purvis, who's also with the Fire Marshal's Office and is a fire safety education officer, and has also worked as a volunteer with local fire departments, with the Tri-Community Fire Department and Oakville Volunteer Fire Department, and has worked both at the local and at the state level in education, and has been an emergency, let's see if I can find that, an emergency response, working in the field in environmental emergency response. So has, again, a different perspective and can help us understand how to prevent fires and fire injury. Then we have Alicia Jones, who's the project director for the Tobacco Free Coalition of Harrison County under the purview and direction of the American Lung Association. So working locally to help prevent tobacco use among our young folks, and then working nationally with the American Lung Association, helping people quit smoking and having the community work towards assuring that people have resources to understand how children are impacted by this and how the use of specifically e-cigarettes can be prevented. Because we know, I have a son who's a teacher, we know that kids sit in class and use e-cigarettes and the teachers don't even know it, and it is dangerous, even if people think it's not dangerous, it truly is. And then Crystal Veazey, who is from the Department of Health and directs the Lead Poisoning Prevention in Healthy Homes program, and can talk to us about the long-term effects of lead in our children. She runs this program, coordinates care service, and provides technical assistance and oversight for the program within the health department, and has more than 20 years of public service with, that's with the health department, right, Crystal? Yeah, that's exceptional, thank you. And so these are our experts, and I am going to turn it over to Tammy Peavy to talk about what she hopes listeners will take away from this and introduce the subject of fire prevention.
We want to make sure that everyone knows that preventing a fire is the best thing to do, but we also want to make sure everyone is aware of what they need to have in their homes and what to do if they have a fire. Many times we do have unpreventable fires, but we want to make sure we're prepared for all of those. First thing we want to do is make sure that we have working smoke alarms in our homes. If they're not working, they won't notify us that there is a fire. So those alarms need to be inside any room that people sleep in to notify them, especially when at night, when you're less likely to smell the smoke or know that there is a fire. You also want to have those in the immediate vicinity, like right outside those sleeping areas. So again, earlier notification when we're asleep. And there's a great variety of smoke alarms on the market. So you need to know your smoke alarm. What do you have in your home? Is it an ionization alarm? Is it a photoelectric alarm? Those detect different kinds of smoke. Is it a combination of the two? Or there's new technology coming out in 2022 that will know the difference and detect or have fewer nuisance alarms when you're when you're cooking and the smoke alarm goes off and there's not really a fire. So you need to know what your smoke alarm sounds like and the different sounds that your smoke alarm makes. Traditionally, 3 beeps means that you have smoke in your home and you need to act accordingly. A single chirp about every minute is an indication that your smoke alarm battery is low or is at the end of its life and the entire alarm needs to be replaced. We need to be testing those batteries at least monthly. Usually that's just pressing and holding the button to ensure that it will make that sound. If there are replaceable batteries, you should replace those batteries at least once a year. Some smoke alarms are going to have non-replaceable batteries, and you'll just replace those at the end of the battery life, just the entire alarm. And regardless of your battery type, your smoke alarm should be replaced every 10 years. And many people are not aware of that. They think they change their battery every year and their alarms are good. But those smoke alarms have to be replaced every 10 years to ensure that they are going to respond to if you have a fire. I'm going to turn it over to Paige. It's Zach, is going to talk to us a little bit about how to get out of our home if there is a fire.
Good afternoon. Thanks again for having us. Like Tammy was saying, I'm going to talk about making an escape plan for your homes. It's very important to have a plan when you have children in your home. Children sometimes need help getting out of the house. They may not know how to escape or what to do unless an adult shows them and tells them how to do it. That is why it's important to have a plan and practice it at least twice a year. Not only do you want to practice during the day, but you want to practice at nighttime, because nighttime practicing is different from being able to see your house during the daytime. Don't tell your kids when you're going to do the drill. Just kind of do it sporadic or periodically throughout the year. Also, you want to have a plan for your young children who cannot get outside by themselves, toddlers, babies, young kids. For instance, if you have a teenager or older kid, you want to make sure that they know, hey, you need to wake your little sister, your little brother up, or I'm, as the parent, going to wake them up. You just get outside and meet us at the meeting place. It's important to find 2 ways out of your house, each room in your house. Make sure your windows aren't blocked by a bed or anything like that you have to move out of the way. You want it to be free and clear so they can open the window and get out. And once they're outside, you want to make sure that they have a stationary meeting place, not a car, not anything that can be moved, like a tree, mailbox near the road, or a barn or something like that that's going to be permanently there. That way everybody knows where to go once they get outside. And that way you can have accountability and make sure everybody's good. And also make sure that you tell your young ones never go back inside for anything whatsoever. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Paige and let her speak on hers. Thank y'all.
Teaching fire safety education, we always try to make our presentations or gear them towards age-specific groups. And especially if we're teaching educators or parents, you always want to make sure that you are teaching them something that is on their level. When working with young children, it's so important to remember to keep it simple, keep it on their level, to remember that they can't always take in more than a few concepts at a time and take them in and process them and remember them and practice them. Children under 5 are at the highest risk for burn injuries. burn injuries among young children most frequently occur because they're touching something or pulling something down on themselves, such as a stove or the pot handle on a stove or an iron on an ironing board or a hair straightener or things like that. So it is so very important for them to be taught and for them to be able to identify things that are hot and that there is a risk for touching things that are hot. A lesson that we kind of do or use is something called What's Hot, What's Not. And basically what it is pictures of household everyday things, things that are hot, things that are not hot, a stove, ice cream, a chair, a grill, a hair straightener, an iron, these types of things so that the kids can look at them and we can talk about them and they can try and think and, know the difference between something that can get hot or something that may not. But the whole thing of that, well, some of those pictures I just told you what we use, of course, matches, lighters, those types of things. But the most important lesson of that is if they think there's something hot, that they need to avoid it, not touch it, and to get a grown up. Catchy phrases are always fun. I was reading one that said, Code Red Rover, get a grown up over. And I love catchy phrases that I really love them. I think they help kids learn. Kids are great repeaters, but it also is important that it helps them learn, but they also know to do the action with those words, that they're not just saying it, that they practiced it and they know, exactly what they're saying. Burns can also occur from hot liquids, coffee, tap water, bath water, soup. We do always want to talk to our kids too about that. Maybe teach them not to turn the tap water on unless an adult's around, because it can be on the hot side and get hot very quick, and that becomes a hazard for them that they possibly could get burned. Chemical and electrical burns are also a high risk for this age group, younger children. It is important too to teach them electrical outlets are hot. They can burn us in a certain way. Household cleaners and chemicals are for adults only, not to touch them. I mean, of course, in an ideal world, we would have all the little plastic things in the electrical outlet so they couldn't touch them. But those types of things. Something that's important too is to teach them to stay away from heating sources, a fireplace. Keep a safe distance. We always kind of say 3 feet. In kids' terms, I always say 3 big steps, or when the parents are cooking, just to make sure that they have a safe kid-free zone around the stove. Electrical heaters, to make sure they know to stay away from those. I think about that commercial. It's a child development commercial maybe, and it's the mom talking and she kind of looks goofy and she's saying, oh, it's a banana, it's yellow. And then the camera turns and it shows an infant or a younger child. And I just think about that in everyday life, because children do really learn from what they experience and what there is every day. And every chance that a parent can or a teacher can get to say, hey, we're having soup today and it can be hot. So we always need to stir it and make sure that it's cool before we eat it. Just things like that, because it does help them develop habits and to learn things, and those habits that will eventually help keep them safe.
So continued teaching all the time. Sometimes with my grandchildren that you say things, don't touch that, and that makes them want to touch it more. So
Exactly.
So you really have to watch and continue to pay attention. So Alicia, let's see, I can't see you anymore, but I'm hoping that Zach can, or that you are still with us. So Alicia, if you could talk to us some about secondhand smoke and about e-cigarettes, that would be lovely.
Yes, thank you, Mary. I'd be more than happy to. I'm going to share my screen. So as she already alluded to, I'm going to talk about secondhand smoke. Many people have heard of secondhand smoke, but they might not really know what it is. So secondhand smoke is the combination of smoke from the burning end of a cigarette and the smoke breathed out by the smokers. We call it the mainstream smoke. So also too, secondhand smoke, it contains 7,000 chemicals. 70 of those are carcinogens that can cause cancer. And that does include lead. Lead is one of the chemicals found in cigarettes. So the new thing that's on the market, it's been out a couple of years, I would say maybe since 05, 07 is e-cigarettes. And boy, have they evolved. They evolved more than we can keep up with them. We don't know as much about e-cigarettes as we do cigarettes, but we do know they are very harmful and they will have you to progress and be sicker quicker than a cigarette. So as I've already mentioned, there are several chemicals found in cigarettes. And although e-cigs do not have as many chemicals in it, they are very harmful. As you can see on the screen, there are 7,700 flavors that are not approved by the FDA. And unfortunately, we still keep finding these in the hands of our youth. We recently, a year ago, there was a T21 bill that was passed. So now you have to be 21 to even obtain tobacco and tobacco-less products. But yet schools are still having the difficulty of keeping them out of the bathrooms, the classrooms, and everything else. As Mary already mentioned, that a lot of people don't even know what e-cigs look like. And like I said, there are so many on the market. It's really hard to keep up. But the most common one is going to be the Juul, which looks like a little USB port. So here are some of the chemicals. We have heard from many people who choose to engage in this behavior that theirs does not contain nicotine. Most of them do. A lot of time people think they don't have nicotine, but they do. And nicotine is highly addictive. It is more addictive than illicit drugs, as in cocaine, heroin, meth. You can find people who are able to kick the habit of street drugs, but yet are still addicted to nicotine. Then we have something called bronchiolitis obliterans, which basically is known as popcorn lung. There is a chemical that is in our actual microwave popcorn that we can eat it, but when it's breathed in, it can make you very sick. It can scar the airways and also cause them to have inflammation, which can close off your airways. And by doing this, it makes it very hard to breathe. And some youth and young adults are already suffering from this. And unfortunately, it is irreversible. There is medication out there to slow the progression of it, but it is an irreversible, serious condition. Then back to the vapes. A lot of people don't even know what's in them. Some people think it's just water, that they are, because it says vape, but you're actually aerosoling, if that makes sense. So it's like taking an aerosol can and spraying it. That's basically what you're doing to your lungs. It has solvents in it, flavorings, preservatives, additives, and formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is used, it's an embalming fluid, but yet you find it in vapes and in cigarettes. And what I've seen many commercials, one of my favorite commercials, where you see this drastic, it looks like it's a dragon and it's made out of metals. And they're basically trying to educate you on that vapes have tiny particles of metals in it. And imagine what that is doing to your lungs. It's puncturing your lungs, which is also making it very hard to breathe. So the basic thing that we want you to take away from this is that cigarettes aren't safe, vaping isn't safe. I know there's a lot of misinformation out there that states that vaping is safer than cigarettes. Well, none of it is safe for you, especially when you are a child, when you are a youth. You have to think of it this way. Your body is still growing and you're adding all these harmful chemicals into your body. The brain does not fully develop until you're about 26 years old. So imagine what it's doing to your brain as well. So please share the information, be aware, and don't think that you're safe just because you're not the smoker. Because guess what? There's also secondhand smoke from vapes as well. And we're going to also talk a little bit about third-hand smoke. So third-hand smoke is when the smoke settles. So even if someone is smoking around you, you're not safe. So I know there's many teens who friends smoke and quote unquote, they don't want to be a snitch. Just remember, it's not safe. It's not safe to be in the presence of someone who is smoking. So bathrooms, that's one of the most common places at the schools is someone vaping in the bathroom. So just be mindful of that. If you can leave, even if you don't want to tell on them, but you're not helping anyone by keeping it a secret. So this is the information that we want to put out there to share with the community.
So Alicia, can I ask you a quick question before we move on? The popcorn lungs, is the chemical that causes that something that's in e-cigarettes?
Yes, it is found in e-cigarettes as well.
I see.
And therefore, that's why they get it. I guess they just coined it popcorn lung because that same chemical is also found in the popcorn we eat. We can eat it, but we can't breathe it in. And when you breathe it in, it makes you very ill. And as I stated, it is irreversible. Once you start to have these conditions, you're pretty much stuck with them for life. So if you get someone who's 14, 15, and they start vaping behind their parents' back and they continuously do it, then they can find themselves in this situation where they have an irreversible lung condition. And it makes it very hard to breathe. Me being someone who has had a major surgery, you don't realize how much you love air till you lose it. That's the best way I can say it. It's hard to explain, but I used to do a little project with the kids back when we were in the community where I would have them to suck from a straw just normally. Then I'll ask them to pinch their nose while they suck from a straw and see how difficult that is. And I said, that's how it feels when you cannot breathe correctly.
Cindy has asked, is that why COVID is, and I couldn't read the very end of it, but is that why COVID is hitting people who, right.
Who smoke?
Yes.
Yes, that definitely is. I actually have a presentation that I've been sharing with my county that basically talks about when you smoke, it makes you more vulnerable. You already basically have this, this condition because everybody thinks they're healthy until COVID comes around. Mm-hmm. So even though you probably have been able to smoke and maybe you haven't been coughing or wheezing or any of that, but with COVID being present, it makes you more susceptible to get it. Not only that, to have lasting effects from it, and also, unfortunately, to die from it. The few people that I know who have died from COVID, a couple of them were heavy smokers. You think about it like this. Most people who smoke, they either have been smoking for so long, they don't want to give it up, or they might have been smoking for a short period of time, but they smoke packs and packs a day.
Mm-hmm. So, Thank you very much, Alicia. I appreciate your comments, and we'll get back to some of those questions in just a minute. Crystal, can you tell us about lead poisoning and lead poisoning prevention?
Individuals and families may be wondering about what is lead and if there is what the concern of lead is for small children. So lead is a naturally occurring element that's found in small amounts in the Earth's crust. It's a heavy metal and has been used throughout history as an additive for a wide variety of products. When lead is added to paint, it allows smooth coatability, and it enhances the color of the paint, and it also helps resist corrosion. Lead can also be added to plastics and vinyl, and the lead provides rigidity and sturdiness. And lead is toxic to both humans and animals. Some sources of lead. Any home built before 1978 can have lead-based paint on it. Lead was not banned for the use in paint until after 78. If you have peeling, chipping, or flaking paint on the exterior or inside of the home, especially around the windowsills and the door frames, you're going to have a tremendous amount of lead dust. And this lead dust can be collected on the windowsills, on the floors, or around the outside of the home. If there is peeling, chipping, or flaking paint on the exterior of the house, there's going to be lead dust that's in the soil. And if children are playing outside or close up around the house, they're going to be getting this lead dust on their hands or toys. And then if they put their hands or toys in their mouth, they're going to be getting exposed to lead. Certain items that we commonly have in our home, such as keys, phone chargers, and electrical cords, they all have lead in them. So it's very important not to let children handle or mouth these items because they could be getting exposed to lead. Mini blinds purchased before 1997 can have lead in them. And what happens when the sun hits the blinds, it causes the lead that's inside the blinds to break down, and lead dust will form on the slats of the mini blinds. It could form, lead dust can form on the windowsills or on any surfaces up close to the windowsills, such as a crib, a sofa. Also, water and food can have lead. If you live in a home with older pipes, you can have lead in your water. Also, we found that a lot of wells also have, well water can have lead in it as well. Some foods can contain lead, especially some of the Hispanic candies that children like to purchase. A lot of those candies can have lead in them. Individuals who work with certain jobs and hobbies, such as construction, painting, welding, mechanic, bullet manufacturing, if you work on repairing bridges or doing painting on the highways, all of these individuals could be getting exposed to lead dust and bringing that lead dust home on their work clothes and their work shoes. Also, home remedies and spices can contain lead. When you think about the spices, you may think about ozocorn or greta, which are used by the Indians and the Hispanics. So you may be wondering, how does lead poisoning affect a child? The chart on the left shows you the lead concentrations in the blood. You have the children on the left and the adults on the right. As we said before, there is no safe level of lead, but the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has set the level of concern at 5 micrograms per deciliter or higher. So as that lead level increases, things can happen to that child. At lead levels of 10, they have stunted IQ and can have hearing and growth problems. At lead levels of 20, they can have nerve damage. And additional symptoms or issues can arise as the lead level increases. Lead affects the brain. It can interfere with the child's IQ, can cause hearing loss and damage the nerves. It can affect hormones, which can cause the cell growth to be impaired or cause issues with teeth and bone development. It can affect the stomach, leading to abdominal pain and cramping. The reproductive system, it can lower sperm counts and can in adults, can cause spontaneous miscarriages. With the heart, it can lead to high blood pressure. The blood, it can cause fatigue, lightheadedness, rapid heartbeat, dizziness, and shortness of breath. And in the bones, with lead being in the bones, it slows the growth of children. Some of the outreach activities that we have done, we're always going across the statewide to do community outreach and education to raise awareness about lead poisoning and the need for lead testing. We visit baby cafes, we go to baby showers, we talk to daycares, Head Starts, and we work with sororities and fraternities as well as with schools. We attend health fairs. We talk to physicians through clinician visits. And the topics that we include is lead poisoning, healthy homes, safe sleep, what someone can do to reduce their exposure to take home lead. And we also talk about case management, mitigation of lead poisoning.
And Crystal, I'm assuming that's all of your slides. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all for your beginning comments. What I'd like to do now is ask y'all some questions, if you don't mind, and we can have a conversation about some of these injuries and prevention for them. We've got some questions from the public. What I'd like to start with is going back to fire prevention. And can y'all tell us, and you mentioned some of these, what's the most important thing we can teach our very young children? You mentioned having a plan and practicing that plan for getting out of a house where there's a fire, and not touching hot things and knowing what's hot and knowing that it's dangerous. But what would y'all say are the most important things you can teach your young children, the ones that are less than 5 years of age, the ones that have the attention span of a gnat?
I think Paige really hit on that, is short messages that and repetition, helping them understand the sound of the smoke alarm so that they know what to do when that happens. And as Zach mentioned, practicing that plan so that they know when that sound happens, they know what to do. But and Paige mentioned making sure that you have a safe distance around those heat sources so that they aren't not getting contact burns from that. And I'll let Zach and Paige ring in on anything else that they think I might have missed.
No, I think Tammy pretty well hit on everything. Know the sound of your smoke alarm. Make sure you do know 2 ways out of your house and that your exits aren't blocked. And also try and keep that 3-foot barrier around anything that's hot, especially your stoves, heaters, stuff like that.
I think practicing the plan is so important. We even talk about that sort of thing with medical students and residents. The way to practice any sort of emergency preparedness plan is to practice it, or the way to know it is to practice it.
Yes, ma'am.
Because you don't really know it until you've done it.
Right. And, you want to keep practicing repetitions, everything.
Yeah.
That's what we teach is, you can't practice too much, practice till you can't get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Right. That's so very important. I really, really appreciate you bringing that up. And I'd never thought about having more than one way out of the house. And then, of course, surprising them with a practice in the middle of night. I can imagine that would be entertaining, but really good to do with your family so that they don't get scared, so that they know what to do.
Yes.
Yeah, and Cindy has said the loud noise scares young kids, so getting them used to it and knowing what it is sounds like that's very important as well. And I have a personal question. We have a smoke alarm that's wired to the house electrical system, but it also has batteries. Do y'all have a preference as to what kind of, you'd said, Tammy, that there were a lot of different kinds of smoke detectors, but do y'all have a preference?
Ideally, your smoke alarms would be hardwired with the battery backup, and they would be interconnected. So when one sounds, they all sound. But in many cases, those might be cost prohibitive. Mm-hmm. Those are best installed during construction rather than a retrofit. So having a smoke alarm or a kind of smoke alarm in your home is better than having the ideal one, something to notify you. Mm-hmm. A single smoke alarm is not enough. Most fatal fires happen at night. So that's why we want to have those near where we sleep so we can hear them. And then having those drills at night, because not only children, but even as adults, if we're abruptly awakened in the middle of the night, we don't know what to do. So having those drills so during the day, so they learn the sound, and then at night, so when they are abruptly awakened, they can react accordingly. And as your children age, you continue to have those drills, and you can modify your plan to fit their abilities at the time. And not only as children, as we become adults and as we age into older adults, that we continue to have those fire drills to know that we can get ourselves out. As we age, we lose our flexibilities and some of our mobility. So we have to plan around those as well. So constantly practicing to modify that plan to ensure whoever's in our home at the time, whether it be a visitor, overnight guest, that everyone knows they could get out.
So Mercy, I'm going to have to practice with my husband in the middle of the night. Oh, that'll be fun.
Absolutely.
I understand what you're saying, though. It's important. We have dogs and we have grandchildren who spend the night here, so it's important. Little bitty obstinate grandchildren. So if we're talking about secondhand smoke and e-cigarettes, Alicia, and asthma, I know that asthma is related to smoke exposure as well. And we had someone from the public ask about how is it that some kids can outgrow asthma when, you have one set of lungs and you continue to use that same set of lungs and other kids don't. Can you talk about the relationship between secondhand smoke and vaping and asthma a little bit?
Sure, thank you. First of all, there's 2 sets of asthma. You have some who are born with it and some that develop it later. But do they really develop it later? So as I researched more on the question, one thing that I did find out is that once you have asthma, you have asthma. It is a chronic condition. If you have a chronic condition, you don't get rid of it. But what happens is over time, and it actually happened with my son, you hear the phrase being coined, childhood asthma. And it was a mild case. And I thought before I researched that he outgrew it. But from what I've learned is that you never outgrow it. But about a third of the people who think they've outgrown it, it comes back later in life. So basically the symptoms can hit you at any time. Up until that point, they're just non-existent. They're just pretty much laying dormant. You may have the occasional, especially in the South with the humid, you deal with your sinus. And that really is a form of asthma if you've already had it, because your nose may run, you might have issues breathing, dry cough, whatever the case may be. It just lays dormant. But as I've stated, about a 3% of these individuals who think that they have outgrown it, it comes back later on in life. And unfortunately, if you are in a home where secondhand and thirdhand smoke is present, you may never outgrow it. You may always deal with these symptoms, or you may be someone who didn't think you had asthma and it brings it on, along with COPD, you have emphysema. These are conditions that come about from secondhand smoke. And again, I want to reiterate, because it's so important to know, you don't have to be the smoker. A lot of times the people who get affected by these things are the ones who do not smoke, but they live in these secondhand and thirdhand environments where they're constantly breathing it in. Like I told you earlier, the secondhand smoke is actually worse than firsthand smoke. Think about a cigarette. You have a filter on the end. But true enough, if you're the smoker, you're getting both ends of it. If you're not the smoker, you're only getting the secondhand smoke, which has no filter. So you're getting every chemical imagined coming at your lungs. And unfortunately, our little small vulnerable population is going to be our children, our elderly. You might have even heard of something called RSV. So think about that. If you bring home someone who might have been a preemie, their lungs are even smaller and it's constantly inhaling these chemicals. And what do we do when we hold a baby? We put them right up to our clothes. So now they're breathing in from your clothes. So that is a part of thirdhand smoke. It has now settled. It's in your shirt. It's in your hair. And that baby is right there breathing it in. So
that's a really good point, and something I'd not thought about, that when you're holding a baby, you're holding them right up against you. And so they are breathing in that thirdhand smoke, all the
Yes.
particles from the cigarettes or the vape. So that's another way we can prevent really asthma attacks in our young children, is by not allowing them close to second and third hand smoke. I
definitely.
think that's really important for folks who are listening today, in a way that we can keep our kids healthy so that they can be the best that they can be as adults. So when we talk about lead, Crystal, one of the things that there were several people who asked about data. And I know you have some data, but one of the things that they were wondering is how many homes in Mississippi are there that might have lead-based paint in them still, that were constructed before 1978, and that still have the lead-based paint in them. I know that's an issue. It's an issue for older homes that haven't been rehabbed. So do you know how much of that exists in Mississippi, and how does it compare to the rest of the country?
Based off of the 2019 American Community Survey data, 43% of the total occupied housing in Mississippi was built pre-1978. And most of the time when we are doing our home visits, they are older homes still with lead-based paint. So there's still a lot of homes in Mississippi with lead-based paint issues. The state doesn't have any funding available except for in one area to actually remediate those homes that have lead-based paint. So all of the homes that we have been going into are older homes. And usually they are renter occupied, most of the times. We find very few that are owner occupied.
So the best thing that parents can do who have small children in a home that was built before 1978, and especially if they're renting, because they can't really do the renovations and it's expensive if they're renting, would you have advice for them about how to make sure that there's not lead dust and things like that?
Yes. If you're living in a pre-1978 home and you're concerned about lead-based paint, there are lead check swabs that can be purchased at Lowe's or Home Depot. And these lead check swabs will give you, they won't tell you how much lead is present, but it will give you an indication once you use it, whether lead is present or not. They kind of look like a little crayon, and they have a fluid in them, and you can crush the lead check swabs, and you can use the swab to test surfaces. And once, say you test a windowsill, and the swab turns pink or red, that means lead's present.
And so the parents then should do what? Should they make sure that they vacuum and?
Okay, they definitely want to make sure that they keep the children away from those areas. If it's a windowsill with peeling, chipping, or flaking paint, they can wipe down that windowsill with soap and water to remove any lead dust, and then they can cover that windowsill with contact paper or plastic until they're able to paint over it. If there's any concerns of individuals who may be working with lead and bringing lead dust home, they definitely don't want to do any type of dry sweeping of the floors, because dry sweeping of lead dust will just stir the lead dust up and it can collect on other surfaces. You want to either wet mop the floors or use something like a Swiffer. And anytime you come inside the home, you want to make sure you take your shoes off, because you've been outside, you could have lead dust on your shoes as well as other contaminants. So we always recommend taking your shoes off before you go in.
One of my daughters-in-law thinks that's a good idea anyway, and I suppose it is, because think of the things you're walking on outside, not just lead, but all kinds of other things. Let's see, do we have other questions from the public? Are there other resources that y'all have that you want to tell the folks who listen to this about? So, for example, ways that they could get someone in their community to talk about these things, or, how can they get a smoke detector if they can't afford it themselves, or advice about any of these things?
I would like to go first, if that's okay.
Alicia, good, thank you.
So one thing that we do in the community is that I run a coalition. Always try to get involved with your coalitions, because that's your way to advocate, so that you can give that information, get the education, help spread awareness, because pre-COVID we were doing health fairs and things like that.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Electronic information that we can pass out, and send out different presentations just to keep people aware and mindful. Like you mentioned already, COVID, secondhand smoke. I even have a presentation on breastfeeding and smoking. So there's always going to be information out there. And if you're not sure where to receive it, you can always go to the American Lung Association website, which is lung.org. You can go to healthymississippi.org, which is the state's website, and get that information as well. As it's already been stated, I am a project director, but there's a project director in every county within Mississippi. So you can find a coalition to attach yourself to and get involved and get that information out there to your sororities, fraternities, your churches, your schools, all of that. And we have some kind of initiative where we can get that information depending on what the age group is. So whether it's K through 6, whether it's middle school, high school, whatever the age group may be, so that we can better educate the community. And also too, for those who are older and choose to quit smoking, we have a program that we offer called Freedom from Smoking. It's an 8-week course. It's absolutely free. And it's also on the American Lung Association website, or you can reach out to your coalition member as well.
So every county in Mississippi has a tobacco-free coalition.
That is correct.
Okay, and they should be able to find that online.
Correct. If you go to healthymississippi.org, and if you can't locate it there, but you see something that says the Office of Tobacco Control, if you reach out to them, they will be more than happy to give you your contact person.
Okay, and just as a little free advertising, that's the health department's website, I'll have you know.
Yes, it is.
And I can't help it, but sometimes when I'm talking about the health department, I say we and our, when I should be saying that with UMC. So forgive me if I say it the wrong way. Crystal, I know you understand that too. So are there other things about fire prevention that are available to folks that you want to mention?
Sure. And Paige, I saw you unmute. You want to go ahead and address that?
Well, I was just going to say a lot of local county fire departments will come out and do presentations if they're available. Our office, you can always call our office and we can try and hook you up. Like I said, for anybody to come and speak out, that type of thing. We do try to have a smoke alarm program where we do have smoke alarms statewide for people that will participate in those programs. We don't right now, it's always depending upon funding.
Sure.
But also, I was trying to think something else, Tammy.
Right. Some of the fire departments still have smoke alarms. We are currently out of our stock, but some of them still have a few left. And some of them are also partnering with American Red Cross. They have a nationwide smoke alarm installation program. But always reach out to your fire department, even if they don't have smoke alarms, if you purchase them yourself, and they can help you with advice on which ones to choose. Many of them will install them for you if you've made that purchase. And then for additional resources, you can always go to the NFPA website, National Fire Protection Association, or the United States Fire Administration. They have many free resources they're excellent resources that you can download straight from their websites. And as Paige said, we are always happy to assist anyone. We do presentations across the state, or we can point you to additional resources that we just don't have time to cover here. We have those resources to point you to. We just don't have time to go through them all today.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's great. I really appreciate it. Y'all have been very helpful. And I'm going to start practicing with my grandchildren. My 5-year-old grandchild has taught me to practice for tornadoes. We have played Let's Hide in the Closet together. So now we're going to practice avoiding or what to do when the fire alarm goes off, when the smoke detector goes off. Crystal, you want to talk about resources for lead prevention?
Yes, since we are a statewide program, we have individuals within our office who can come out to Head Starts, child care centers, any place that needs education and outreach to do presentations. During COVID, where the face-to-face trainings are not taking place, but we are very happy to do Zoom trainings. We also have education materials on our website that can be downloaded. And we also have videos on YouTube as well, talking about lead poisoning, how you can reduce exposure. So anybody who needs information, feel free to give us a call. We'll be glad to provide that information in those trainings.
Well, I sure appreciate it, y'all. I've learned a lot. And I know anybody who watches this will learn a lot too. And I hope you're ready for some phone calls. This is really good information, and these are important things that we know we can prevent. We know that if we pay attention as parents and grandparents, we can help our children grow up healthier and stronger. We can practice getting out of the house if the fire alarm goes off. We can make sure that our homes are lead-free, or if there is lead in the home, that we can avoid it. And we can make sure that our kids aren't around second and third hand smoke, and that Uncle George, who still smokes, isn't holding that baby against his lapel. And we can help Uncle George too, can't we? 1-800-QUIT-NOW. So I really appreciate the information that y'all have brought today. Thank you very, very much.